Let's talk about King, and Armor King, and King 2, and Marduk, and Armor King 2, and hey, I've been keen for a while to make a video on King. In my opinion, he's one of the most interesting, best, and most wholesome characters in the entire series. The more I looked into him, I realised that it's basically impossible to talk about King without talking about Armor King and Marduk in depth, which to me is completely fine. The way all of these characters interact with each other is basically Tekken's universe of a WWE storyline. What are you doing here, Armor King? If that is your real name. I don't know my real name. Hey Hachi, I thought you were dead. So did I. Maybe it's just a Tekken universe that is off the rails. To discuss these characters, let's go back to the very beginning. So the mantle of King has been in Tekken since Tekken 1, making him one of 3 playable characters that has been featured in every Tekken game to date. Want to see the other 2? Go watch this video. Again, shameless plug. King is a luchador from Mexico who supports orphans across the world. A luchador is a professional Mexican wrestler, traditionally masked. The really cool thing about the character King is that he's actually based on a real person, Fray Tormenta. He was a Mexican Catholic priest who founded and supported an orphanage for 23 years as a lucha libre wrestler. There's been plenty of videos on him, maybe I'll make my own, but if you're interested, I highly recommend looking into him, he's very interesting. Now King, he used to be a street brawling orphan. However, in one of his fights, King was grievously wounded and collapsed in front of a monastery. After being taken in by a priest, King realised the error of his ways and resolved to start a new life, which he did. He became a priest, renounced his old fighting ways, and aimed to build an orphanage for street children, hoping to save them from becoming a kind of fighter he used to be. Now King, he did succeed in building an orphanage, but as one can assume, this kind of lifestyle does not leave one well off. Basically, everything he had, he was putting into his orphanage. He's actually a top tier human being. Yes, he is actually a human wearing a mask. We've seen his face, or at least part of it, in the intro of Tekken 1. Now, how do we know for a fact that he is a top tier human being? Well, if we go to the Tekken wiki and look at King, if we take a look at dislikes, the tears of children. So, to bring in an income for the orphanage, King fought in wrestling matches, donning his now iconic Jaguar mask to conceal his identity, and he acquired the title Beast Priest. It is at this time we introduce our first side character, Armor King. Now, according to the lore, Armor King came across another wrestler? Armor King came across another wrestler in a Jaguar mask, who went by the similar title of King. Now at this point in time, I'm pretty sure Armor King sought out King and wanted to basically decide who was the true King bro, and they went one-on-one. This match resulted in King winning, but in the process, he accidentally crushed the eye of Armor King. Now, as time went on, King won many titles, while the injury caused Armor King's career to plummet. This obviously formed a grudge between the two, and the rivalry was set, which brings us onto the events of Tekken 1. So while King continued to do his thing, fighting in matches to fund the orphanage, the King of Iron Fist Tournament 1 was announced. As there was a massive cash prize, King saw this as an opportunity to fund the orphanage, and he then entered the tournament. Armor King noticed that King had entered the tournament, and wanting revenge, entered to beat his rival and reinstate his name within the wrestling world. As fate would have it, these two matched each other and King came out the victor. King claimed third? I thought Paul got third. The lore here is so whack. Maybe they were on opposite sides of the bracket. Anyway, King got third, won enough cash to fund the orphanage, and Armor King developed a respect for King. From here, the two actually became sparring partners and friendly rivals. Between the events of Tekken 1 and Tekken 2, the writers decided to put King through more pain. Apparently the orphanage began to struggle, and King had turned to drinking, and then the death of a child within his care pushed him to breaking point. If only there was someone out there that could motivate King and bring him back. Oh yeah, Armor King. He was worried about his friend, found him, and helped him get his life back on track. Armor King also motivated King to train for the King of Iron Fist Tournament 2, and King entered with the intention of winning the prize money to fund the orphanage. Unfortunately, King lost in the tournament. It's a bit up in the air on who he lost to. I'm not actually too sure, so if someone knows, leave it down in the comments. But after the King of Iron Fist Tournament 2, King ended up teaching his orphans his fighting skills as a mean of self-defense, which now leads us onto the events of Tekken 3. So approximately 16 years after the second tournament, King was attacked and killed by Ogre, the god of fighting. Ogre was known to seek out powerful fighters to take their power and moves. I'm not too sure, But anyway, Ogre sought out King and killed him. Yep, King is dead. After learning about King's death, Armor King sunk into a state of depression at the loss of his friends. However, this is not the end of the mantle of King, as Armor King learned of a new king who had been an orphan in King's orphanage and was now donning King's mask to try and fight for his orphanage, though without much success. This is the birth of King 2. So the second king was a street urchin who was brought up in the first king's orphanage. Until the age of 24, this person worked hard with King until one day, news broke of the first king's death. Seeing that the orphanage would crumble into ruin, this man donned the mask of King and imitated his style. To keep things simple, I will now just be referring to King 2 as just King. If I start referring to both within the same sentence, I'll state if it's King 1 or King 2. But yeah, King 2 is now just King. Unfortunately, this king had only seen his master's wrestling moves as a child, and he lost every competition he entered. Armor King, the legend that he is, sought him out and helped him train so that he could pay for the orphanage upkeep. After 4 years of training, King II was now a worthy heir to his successor, and after learning the truth about his mentor's death from Armor King, he entered the King of Iron Fist Tournament 3 to get his revenge on Ogre. I'm not too sure how far he made it into the King of Iron Fist Tournament 3, but we do know he unfortunately didn't get to beat Ogre, as that went to Paul, Phoenix, and Jim Kazama. As the King of Iron Fist Tournament 3 comes to an end, the storm that looms above King II is about to be unleashed. So I'm going to quickly divert and just touch on Bloodline. It's not canon, I think, but I think it's worth talking about. Now, King is much the same in Bloodline as he is in the games. He was an orphan raised in the original King's orphanage who swore revenge when King died at the hands of Ogre. Now, what I personally found odd is the green glow that happens in King's eyes. Now, King is regarded as somewhat freakish and sinister by the other competitors due to his animalistic nature and his continuous silence. Heihachi even implies to Jin that King may be unnaturally linked to Ogre, granting him otherworldly power. I understand that this was done to cause a storyline, but it just seems so unneeded because, spoilers, as we learned, he wasn't linked to Ogre, and his otherworldly power is just down to him training like a madman, so official beast by Heihachi confirmed. Now, in Bloodline, we know that King defeats Craig Marduk, Ling Xiaoyu, and even tournament favourite Paul Phoenix. Now, the rumours surrounding King are only fully dispersed when Julia Chang reveals King's good nature to Jin, as he's determined to continue his hero's legacy and save his orphanage. He unfortunately lost to Jin, but Jin was kind enough to gift the prize money to King. Good move, Jin, and King is still a certified good guy. That's about it for Bloodline. It's kind of the same as Tekken 3, but not really, so anyway, certified wholesome man, we move on to Tekken 4. Or we don't, because I'm going to touch on pre-Tekken 4 and post-Tekken 3. Armor King is at a bar when a fight broke out. You see, this fight was started by an undefeated Vale-Tudo champion known as Craig Marduk. Craig Marduk was caught up in a scandal and was ejected by the Vale-Tudo fighting committee. Marduk, consumed by bitterness and anger, started a fight at this bar in Arizona. Armor King tried to intervene to de-escalate the situation, but Marduk ended up killing him. The court ruled it as second-degree manslaughter, meaning Marduk was not found guilty of intentionally causing death, but he was put in the slammer for 10 years. This obviously didn't sit well with the king, but we'll learn more about that later. 2 years into Marduk's sentence, he was released early. As he walked out, he was handed a plane ticket and a newspaper article about the King of Iron Fist Tournament 4. It turns out King, using the money he saved from winning tournaments, bribed people to release Marduk from prison early. The two matched up in the King of Iron Fist Tournament 4, and King beat Marduk so bad he got hospitalized. But that's not the end. After the tournament, King tracked down Marduk at the hospital, and while he intended to finish him off, he noticed an image of Marduk with two people suspected to be his parents. In this moment, King had a change of heart. He decided that his search for vengeance was foolish, and he walked away. Sounds like a pretty good ending, right? Well, Marduk was less than thrilled at his humiliating defeat at the hands of King. So Craig Marduk, he entered a Vale-Tudo tournament wearing a replica of Armor King's black Jaguar mask and beat all the competition. After winning, he turned to the camera and called out King, telling him that he would be next. King, obviously a bit enraged by the disgrace to his mentor's name, accepts the challenge. Now they meet up again in the King of Iron Fist Tournament 5, and King once again was the victor.
You win!
However, at the end of the match, the two exchange a handshake out of respect, squashing the beef between the two. After the match, Marduk made his way back to the tournament waiting room when the lights went out and he was suddenly attacked. As the lights came back on, he caught a glimpse of his attacker, Armor King. So around this time, King, through the power of Butterfingers, discovered a photograph showing two Armor Kings side by side. He then shared the same idea as Marduk and travelled to where Armor King was buried and found Marduk digging up his grave. Yeah, I know, not cool. But again, from a WWE perspective, it's about right. It's at this point the two were confronted by Marduk's attacker. The man explained that Armor King was two people, not one, and the man Marduk had killed was in fact his older brother.
Don't lie to me!
So the original Armor King was apparently one part of a tag team duo. This new Armor King tells Marduk he can never forgive him for killing his brother. I assume at this point, Marduk and Armor King fight each other. As we learned in King's prologue, they both ended up unconscious by double KO and critically injured in hospital. But we never see this. Am I the only one thinking that Bamco really dropped the ball here? Fingers crossed that we see it at some point. As we know, King is a legend, so to help both Marduk and Armor King, as well as try and keep his orphanage afloat, he entered the King of Iron Fist Tournament 7 to try and secure win-ins that would support the medical procedures and the orphanage. Now at some point, Marduk, upon awakening in the hospital, tried to assault Armor King, but King stopped him, appealing to him to instead wait for Armor King to recover and have his fair fight with him. Marduk heeded this, but rather than a simple revenge match, he wrote a letter challenging Armor King to a retirement match. If Armor King won, Marduk would retire. If Marduk won, Armor King would be demasked and he would give up the name and mask of Armor King. Armor King, on awakening, read this and agreed to its terms. As far as Tekken 8 goes, we currently have no lore for Marduk or Armor King. It is suggested Marduk is coming back in Season 1 of Tekken 8, as people have data mined some data that matches up to Marduk. As for Armor King, there's no news or hints as of yet, but I would be extremely surprised if we don't see him come back at some point. King naturally came back for the starting roster. He was the winner of the Latin America block and he faces Steve in the opening matches. However, Kazuya obviously ruins the tournament. Now after this, King joins up with Team Lars to combat G-Corp on the field, and we do get a really cool chant from the grunts.
They just keep coming no matter how many we take down.
Just our luck. They're all elite. This isn't gonna be easy. Yeah, that's right. We got the one and only King on our side. Yeah! We're not going down without a fight!
In the good ending, which I assume is the Law ending, we see King helping run a soup kitchen with Panda, Kumatu, Martial Law, Paul Phoenix, and Steve in New York. And that's really all we have on King at this point in time. I'm sure more lore is going to come out at some point, and I really don't see his character going anywhere anytime soon. The more I've read up on King, the more I love him as a character. He's just a good, stoic, wholesome man that just wants to help others around him. Only a couple times has he given in to wanting revenge, but he kind of overcomes that and goes back to being what I've already said, the wholesome king that he is. Anyway, that's enough for this video. Let me know who you want to see a video on next, and until next time, enjoy your day.